In the last part, I made a video of how to build a Pfsense box. And this part, we are going to do the installation. But we are not going to do it on a physical box, but inside a virtual machine. So it's easier for me to record the screen and show you what's happening. So first off, you would have to head over to pfsense/download and download the last version you need. I'm just going to pick the live CD with installer. And I'm going to copy over the link location. And I'm going to download it straight to my little home server. And I also have to unpack it. And now we have the ISO of Pfsense. And we're going to install the 2.2.6 version. So let's head back to the virtual machine and create a virtual machine, Pfsense demo. Space-wise, you don't need a lot of storage. I'm usually going for 8 gigabytes. We are just going to install it to archive 1. And we are just giving it, I don't know, 4 cores. Should be plenty. Half a gigabyte of RAM is also more than enough. And we can select different Ethernet types. I'm going to stick with the Intel. You can also pick the Realtek, but for now we are going to stick with Intel. So now it's creating a virtual machine, and we have it here, Pfsense demo. And we go to the hardware selection because the server we built has 2 network cards. And we have 1 network card that is basically connected to the internet. And we are going to add a 2nd network card. And this is going to be our LAN network card. And I'm just going to connect it to VM bridge 1, which is just an empty bridge. Okay, so now we have 2 network cards. And we have the CD drive mounted. We can basically just start it up now and open up a console. And you can see that it automatically, hold on, let me just restart it. And we've pressed F12 really quickly, so we can now go to the boot selection, and we're going to select the CD drive to start basically from our ISO. And we simply wait for the default value, so we are going to boot into multi-user. So we are basically booting off the ISO directly. And now we have a few options where we can go to recovery mode or into the installer mode or continue the live boot. We are going to the installer by pressing I. And we are doing it simply this time, so just accept the default settings and do a quick, easy install. And this is going to simply erase everything that's on our hard disk and partition the space and copy over the files. Now it's asking us to select if whether we want a standard kernel or embedded kernel. I'm going to pick the standard kernel because I want to see this beautiful window here. And the installation has already finished, and now we can simply select reboot, and it's going to start off the hard disk this time. So make sure it's actually booting off the hard disk and not again off the stick. And you can see the default username and password being written here. It's admin and Pfsense. So now this time it's booting from the hard disk, and we can press F1 to make it boot up a little bit faster. And again, now we simply wait for the default values to kick in and start up the system. Okay, so as you can see, by default, my WAN card is connected to my switch, and on my switch there's a router, and the router runs a DHCP server. So it's handing out IP addresses in the 172.16.137.12 range. So if you put up your Pfsense box at home and you connect the WAN port to your router or modem, then you should receive an IP address from your DHCP server. If that's not the case, then you would have to go to number 2 and set manually the interface address of your WAN port. The LAN by default is configured to have the 192.168.1.1 range. So at this point, you could simply take your laptop or your computer and plug a cable into the LAN port. And you should be able to access the web interface by going through 192.168.1.1. In my scenario, I'm connected to a bridge and I cannot directly connect to it. So I'm doing a little trick right now. I'm going to press 8 and type in pfcontrol-d. That is going to disable all the filters and the firewall rules. So now I should be able to access the website going through the public IP address. By default, there is no way to access the WAN interface, the web interface running on the WAN port, because that's blocked by default. And there we go. I could, for example, pfcontrol-e to enable it again. And if I refresh the website, you can see I'm not going to get any connection because the firewall is now in place on the WAN port. So let's disable it and refresh the website again. And now we get the certificate warning again. So let's add the exception and log in with admin and Pfsense. And it's going to get you directly into the wizard. And here we can basically do the configuration of our 2 network cards. They also give you a little information about the Pfsense Gold subscription. So if you need it for work and you need some service line agreements, etc., head over there, check it out. So we are going to do now the general information, which is basically the host name of our Pfsense. And I'm going to call it Pfsense, and my domain is going to be internets.local. So if, for example, I have a computer, it would be pc.internets.local or a laptop.internets.local. So internets.local is the domain I'm using. And as DNS server, I'm going to pick Google's DNS, 8888 and 8844. And we are not going to allow our DNS servers to be overwritten because I want to make sure that I'm not using my ISP's DNS. I rather want some external DNS. You can select the time server information, which is fine. Just leave it default. And our WAN interface is going to get a DHCP address. You can also select a static address here. The MAC address and all that stuff, I don't really need to adjust anything here. I can simply just leave all the default values. And here you can define the LAN range. So I could, for example, just go to another network like 192.168.100.1, and I'm going to use this subnet for our LAN network, and with a subnet mask of 24. So I basically have 255 addresses. The one is taken for the router, and the last one is taken for the broadcast. And of course, we have to define a new password. I'm just going to type in "let me in," but you should definitely switch to a more secure password. And now we have to click the reload button, which is going to basically lock us out again, because the firewall rules are being reloaded, and now we simply do the command again to disable them, and then we should be able to log in soon. Okay, so the reloading took a little bit of time, but we are logged in now. So as you can see, we have two interfaces configured, the WAN port and the LAN port. And the WAN port is already connected to the internet. And the LAN port right now, in my scenario, I'm not able to reach it. In your scenario, you most likely just can put in a cable and connect your computer or your laptop to the LAN port. And you should be able to access the web interface by going through that website. In my scenario, that's not going to work because I have to connect through this one. By default, you cannot connect through the WAN port because we simply have to take a look at our firewall rules. And on the LAN port, you can see an exception. So basically, everything in our LAN net is able to communicate by EP44 and EP546. So we basically have to set up an exception on the WAN port, which is going to allow me to connect to this IP address on port 443. So first off, I have to figure out what IP address this computer has. And it's going to be 172.16.137.153. And we are going to set up an exception for that address. So we go to pass, leave that on TCP, a single host or alias, enter the IP address. And we also select a destination port range, which is 443. And we click save. As you can see, we have two other sets of rules in here. And right now, we are not able to access the website yet after reloading, so we are basically blocked again. So let's remove the block one more time. Head over to the interface configuration of the WAN port. We are going to remove those two checkboxes here at the bottom. And those two checkboxes are basically disallowing any traffic from those ranges. And we are inside this range, so they have to go. And now we apply the changes one more time. And that one can take a few seconds. And our connection has timed out. But that's not a problem because now we can simply access all the website. And to make sure that our firewall is on, we are going to type pfcontrol-e for enable. And you can see it has already been enabled. So now we do have an exception which allows us to access the server directly, but only from this IP address. If you want to do any changes to your interfaces, you can do so here. You can change the IP address and basically the subnet of your LAN configuration. And you can also disable IP version 6. So we are going to do the easy approach now. We are going to disable EP version 6 on the LAN interface. And then after that's done, we are going to do the same on the WAN interface. I'm disabling IP version 6 because of a bunch of reasons, mostly because with version 4 you have to set up some port forwarding rules, and that's simply not the case with IP version 6, and many people don't take that into consideration, and they basically open up their whole home network. So in this example I'm simply going to turn it off. If you know what you're doing, feel free to enable it again and configure it the way you want it. Okay, so basically we have the basic system up and running. We have our network, so now we can simply connect computers to the LAN port. You can add a switch in there and then add multiple computers. We are connected to the interface and we can speak to the internet. So what's next on the list is to set up a proxy server on this one. So we are going to go to packages. And in here you can select a few packages that are basically third parties are packing up those packages, and you can install them through this web interface. So we are going to start with Squid, which is a proxy server. And we are going to select version 3 of Squid, which is the last version. Okay, so Squid is installed. So let's go to the configuration of Squid, the Squid proxy server. And we can simply enable Squid proxy. But we probably have to save the local cache first. So let's just go over to local hash. We can accept the default values and simply click on save. Now we go to the General Rules tab and we enable the Squid proxy. So as you can see, we have proxy interfaces, so you are probably going to leave it to the LAN interface to accept any connection on the LAN interface. I'm also going to select the WAN interface, because I have to connect through the WAN interface, but you rather go through the LAN. This one is also a good option. We basically disabled version 6, so we won't have the problem. But if you have version 6 enabled and you are having problems with DNS lookups, you can specify here to have version 4 being used first, because by default the computer is going to use version 6 first. You can enable a transparent proxy, which means that all the traffic that's going to the internet is going to be running through the proxy, so you don't have to set up clients to do that. And you can also enable logging, which I, in this case, don't need. And that's going to be the email that's shown if the user is getting any error messages, and then it's going to show this email, so the users could contact you. Okay, so let's click Save. So if we are now going to perform a port scan, you will see that it's only discovering the port 443, because we also need to add a firewall rule. So we are going to single host address again. 153, I think it was, yes. And we are going to allow 3128, 3128. So again, this is only needed for my scenario. If you are connected to the LAN port, you are going to be covered by this rule. So let's now run the port scan again. And now you can see it's discovering the second port as well. And now we can try to connect to the proxy. So let's just go to Google. And now I'm going to configure my proxy. I'm using Foxy Proxy, which is a little plugin. And once you configured your proxy lists in here, you can just right-click on there and select the proxy. And let's reload the website. And if, for example, you're going to myip.is, you can now see that the IP used to connect to this web server is, which is my public IP address on the internet. And you can also see that we are basically connecting from this IP address because we are sending headers. So let's go back to the Squid proxy server. And we are, I think, sending 2 headers. The X forwarded for. And we can turn that off and disable the via header and the Squid version. So basically, after you do those 3 changes, other websites are not able to tell whether you are using a proxy or not. And I usually recommend people to disable it because there's less logging involved, and sometimes some websites filter users that are using a proxy. So let's try it again. And now all they can see is the public IP address. Okay, so a question I get often is it possible to filter the kind of traffic like advertisements and stuff? And yes, you can do that too. We are just going to have install another package. And the other package is going to be Squidguard. So let me simply disable my proxy and go down to Squidguard. And let's install it. If you want to have a complete tutorial on how to use Squid and Squidguard, how to forge Squidguard, how to forge, I mean. And there's a great tutorial with a lot of pictures explaining the whole process. How you install the 2 packages, how you configure it, how you get rules, and what you exactly type in there. And all I need from this one is the link to a blacklist. Rip. I'm going to put that inside the blog post. So let's wait for the installation to finish. Okay, please visit blah blah blah. Let's follow the instructions. We go to servers and go to Squidguard proxy. And here it says important. Please set up at least one category on the target categories tab before enabling. That's due to a bug. So let's do what they say. We go to the target categories, and we are simply going to create a dummy category. We leave all the rest by default. And save it. We also go to general settings, and we could enable it now. And you have plenty of ways to connect it, for example, to LDAP or to use other methods of authentication. Right now, all we need to do is go down to the blacklist section. We don't have any blacklist proxy, but we have a blacklist URL. We are going to save that here. And now we go over to blacklist. Now it has our blacklist already in there. We can go to download, and it's now going to download the list, unpack it, and create basically a local index, a little database. And then we have a bunch of categories we can select from, whether to block them or not. Blacklist update complete. Okay. Now we can go to common ACL. And in here we can basically, ACL stands for access control list, and we can define what the user is going to see. So first we are going to specify the targets list. So we have our dummy category, which is basically nothing, so we just leave it like that. Then we have all the different blacklist categories and our default access. So by default, we are going to allow it unless we have anything in the list which we are going to deny. So for example, we could advertisements deny that. And I don't know, if you have kids and you don't want them to trade drugs, you could allow that. If you don't want them to date, you could deny that as well. So you have basically a lot of categories you can specify to be blocked. And you can also specify the error. This website has been blocked by a blacklist. Please contact your admin to be able to view this website. And there we go. Now we go back to the general settings, scroll down, click Save. To save all the settings here. And after that's done, we are going to click on the Apply button. So Squidguard is going to get restarted and all the changes are being loaded. Now let's turn on the proxy again and go to a website, and it's still working. And if we disable Squidguard, and reload the website, you can see all the advertisements popping up. So basically, if I'm having Squidguard disabled, or if I enable it, then it's going to look at the common ACLs. And in here in the target rule list, I disabled advertisements. So now it's not able to load any advertisements. Well, not any, but most of the advertisement it's not going to load. So let's go and reload the website. And you can see all the advertisements are gone from the background. So we've now configured our network cards. We basically learned how to set up a simple firewall rule. We set up Squid and Squidguard to have a proxy on our Pfsense and to be able to filter types of traffic. And in the next video, we are going to go into details on the OpenVPN capabilities. So we are basically going to set up a OpenVPN server on our Pfsense, so we can eventually, if we are somewhere traveling around, we can connect back home to our Pfsense and log into our local network. And we are also going to configure a VPN client, so we are going to use the VPN services of InternetSme, and we are going to set up Pfsense. So we basically connect or route all the traffic that's going through the Pfsense through a VPN exit node. So see you in the next part.